And then finally, if I can mention one other thing that's as an AOB on my Chief Executive's report, which is just to note the fact that Nigel Nice, one of our regional directors, will be retiring before Christmas. And I had the opportunity to say a few words at the Executive Management Board to wish him well and to thank him for his lengthy contribution to NHS Direct. So I'd just like to formally note those remarks here as well, if that's okay. So other than that, very happy to take any questions on the other items in the report.
Well, I'm sure the board would like to echo your thanks and appreciation of Nigel. Many of us know him well and wish him well in his retirement. Questions on your report? Okay, well, maybe I would just like to ask one. On the health and the symptom checkers, I wonder if we could, given the importance of developing the web offering and having that alongside telephone and other channels, could we see the plan for that against the original plan as for the next board? So what I would like to see is what the original time frame looked like.
Yeah.
And what we have actually delivered in our proposed delivery dates against that original plan. Thank you. That would be helpful.
Certainly. I mean, the headline is it's a very considerable delay.
Fine. All right. Let's move on then to our package on corporate performance, which is generally introduced. Trevor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll take you through the headlines from both the performance and finance reports. October was a challenging month. Patient and user numbers remained below contracted levels. There were performance issues for the first time this year on accessing our core service at certain points in the month, not throughout it. Clinical assessment times for lesser non-urgent calls were not as good as we aimed to deliver due to nursing numbers at weekends and peak periods. And we continue to work to ensure that we get the right numbers of staff on at the right times within our financial resources, i.e. when the patients and users need us most. I'm pleased to report that the Strategic Health Authority has recognised the impact on our urgent and emergency referral levels of passing activity through the Pathways field trials. They have agreed dispensation for those activity levels, and we have therefore delivered that target and will not be subject to the penalty referred to within the finance report. Sickness levels remain above target and are subject to a separate report within these papers. Attrition levels have continued to fall, and innovation schemes have additional resources to proceed. Our overall financial performance remains strong, with a year-to-date surplus of £2.2 million, cash balances of £13.2 million, and total capital expenditure of £21.9 million. However, we do recognise the need for better, longer-term capital planning and implementation rates, and the need for continued close and tight financial management across the Trust. In terms of revenue forecasts, we remain on target to achieve our planned surplus for the year, and these performance levels will be reviewed in depth at the Finance Committee later on today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Trevor. It's a nice, succinct summary. I think when I look at the board scorecard, which is the A3 document, it seems to me that tells the story very well, and it's a very honest assessment. It's good to see that patient satisfaction, quality and safety are green. It's good to see finances green. It's not altogether surprising given operational challenges that we've got a lot of amber. And then it's clear that the big worrying area is around the staff, and in particular sickness. So that continues to, I think, the picture you've described, Trevor, is a very clear one. It's clearly reflected in the papers, and it clearly tells us that staff sickness is something, and staff metrics are something we should continue to worry about. Other questions?
Well, I've just at the balancing point. I was just going to say that I do think the dealing with this at the most senior level, Chief Operating Officer with the directors looking at the long-term sickness is reassuring. And sadly, it doesn't. We seem to have more people coming in the system than going out of the system in long-term sickness, as I read it from what we've got. We've got it's very challenging to use that word, but the processes are there to do it and to keep on top of it. And I think that's the thing with long-term sickness. It does need continuous push to get through it. And so I think that's good.
Okay, so Sue, do you want to say something about that before we...
No, it's a separate point.
Okay, so Roger, we've got your sickness absence report, which is agenda item 7.3. I don't know if you were intending to introduce that specifically, but it seems we've got a conversation around that, so if you could...
Very happy to pick that up, Chair, thank you. The situation in relation to long-term sickness is that we made, when we first started to concentrate on this significantly, we made very good progress very quickly. So we got down from over 130 long-term sick cases to under 80, but that is where we have remained for the last 3 or 4 months. One of the features of the long-term sick numbers in the report is that there is a high degree of churn. That's to say, of those 77, 78 cases, half of them go back to work every month and half come in to become long-term sick cases. And that's what we've discovered really over the last 3 or 4 months, and that's what we're starting to concentrate on now. So I think we've probably got, therefore, less than 40 long-term sickness cases, if you see what I mean, and then a significant number of people who trigger the long-term sickness, and that, so we're working separately on those two elements of it. I just wanted to explain that.
Yeah.
Okay, Roger, I had a couple of points on the sickness issue, if I can. So on paragraph 2.8, could you just remind us of what this sickness reporting management service is that external organisations are bidding for? Is that number crunching, or is that...
No, it's much more a reporting system. So a number of organisations these days use external agencies to do their sickness reporting, to remind managers to trigger either return to work interviews or sickness absence reviews within our own policy. And there is evidence that approaching sickness like this can be quite successful. So we are only going to be piloting it through this process in one division, and we will see over the next few months, once we've finished the procurement process, how that works, whether it has an extra effect on our sickness other than the fairly intensive management approach that we're still undertaking. And if it does, then we will make a decision as to whether we roll it out to the whole organisation.
Thank you. Okay. The other question I have is about flu jabs. So we've offered our staff flu jabs. Do we know what the take-up rate is? And
I don't know what the take-up. I can find out.
So, I mean, it seems to me that there must be some sort of... You would expect there to be a relationship between the amount of short-term sickness due to flu and the proportion of people who take up flu jab. And I wonder if we'd ever made that link, and whether we say to people who call in with flu, we ask them whether they've had the jab and encourage them to do so. It seems to me that I'm just disappointed, I suppose, that it isn't something that everybody wants to do. I'm not altogether clear why people aren't more keen to take up flu jabs, and I wonder if it would have an effect on our short-term sickness.
It's an interesting position, particularly amongst health professionals, I find, generally.
Yes, it is.
But I have to insist that it has to be voluntary.
Yeah.
It is a voluntary thing, and so we can strongly encourage people to have flu vaccinations, but we can't do anything more than that, and I don't think we should.
Can we not ask somebody who calls in with flu whether they
We could
have
ask
their
people that.
flu jab?
We could ask people that, but I would insist that it remains a voluntary thing for people. I don't think we can require people to have vaccinations.
So
I look to my clinical colleagues for...
I will support your position. I think it's I don't think, Chair, that we could force people.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
No, but we
want
can...
to be clear. But
Yeah, and I would not sort of seek to answer the sort of clinical effectiveness question of the flu jab, because that's Brian's domain, but there is a number of concerns among clinical staff, including our own, about whether they should or shouldn't have it. So if we can do anything to educate and inform, that's a positive thing that I can do to encourage them to do so.
Okay, I haven't forgotten about you, Sue, but if there's a bit of a conversation about this, then maybe we could, Renette and then Steve and then Nick.
John, there's two key themes that are emerging in terms of the work that I'm doing with the management team and with Roger's team in relation to managing sickness generally. One of the key themes is around these people are your colleagues, not your patients. So I would be a bit concerned in asking about whether people have had flu jabs, etc., as to whether that starts to muddy the message that you are to treat sickness as a colleague rather than being too potentially empathetic with your patients, particularly when it's a nurse who is doing the management activity. The second theme is around making sure that we are properly supporting people in order to be able to fulfil their contract to be in work. And so I think that having a conversation with people around whether they've had the flu jab or other things in relation to that, I would find more acceptable than the former. So therefore, I think that's something that we should ask people, not when they call in sick, but before they go off sick in the first place.
No, I'm with you. Okay, Steve.
Again, Peter, I think the fact that there's all got a focus on this is very reassuring. The number, though, has remained around 6% this year, which is quite high. It'd be interesting to understand what percentage of that 6% is long-term versus short-term sickness. And although I understand, I do get a good sense of the activity that Max and the team are doing on long-term sickness.
And short-term.
And short-term, yeah. I'd be interested what we think is driving the short-term. Is it the fact that people feel that there is very little problem with going off sick when you're in a call centre as opposed to other types of patient?
I think it's fair to say, Steve, that this board spent a lot of time on those sorts of questions. Not that I'm suggesting we haven't got more to do, but you might find it helpful to have an offline conversation, because I think there's a lot of knowledge now in answer to your questions. I can see Roger grabbing for papers, so my sense from that is he's got answers. Yeah. Whether we want to go into it very deeply now, Roger, I'm not sure. Do you want to just quickly?
I mean, I can give you a snapshot of long term, and very roughly, it's about between a quarter and a third long term, and the rest is short term.
That's about average.
Nick.
I just wanted to highlight what Roger's put in his report under paragraph 2.2, which is, since the beginning of the financial year, 25 employees have been dismissed on grounds of ill health, 7 have been granted ill health early retirement, and 43 have resigned whilst absent through sickness. Sure. So the evidence that this is being tackled are abnormally high rates when compared to the rest of the NHS. That they are being tackled is there. Yeah. So I would commend what those most closely involved in it are doing to tackle this. Yeah. And actually, I think that our new team management arrangements, where we have frontline team managers now working at the same time as their team members, will actually further increase the sense that that sickness is something that is being very closely managed.
Okay, that's great. Roger.
And I'd just quite like to end this discussion, if there are no more questions, by referring colleagues to table 1 on page 4 of my sickness report. And whilst I insist that we are continuing to bear down on this issue from a management point of view in all the ways that are described in the report, I do think it's just worth noting that we are nearly 2 percentage points better this year than last year and the previous 3 years. So we have still got a way to go, but there are genuinely encouraging signs about how this is being managed.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.